just been listening to Todd Marcus playing a little bit of music, and if you want to hear Todd and his fellow musicians play live and in person right here at the Live Art Studio, come on September 30th at 7:30 p.m. to hear them play. And with me right now, I have Todd Marcus and his bass clarinet, and we're going to talk about that. Todd, welcome. It's so glad you're here.
Good being here in the space, and very excited about our concert coming up.
Me too. Isn't it a cool space?
It's really nice.
This is really, we have a lot of fun here, and I'm really glad you get to experience a little bit. So we'll have a good time. So one of the things I've wanted to ask you since I knew you were coming here is, you know, we think of a lot of instruments as being part of the jazz scene. Bass clarinet is not one of, and you know, it's kind of funny because I've been listening to a lot of Latif, and Latif plays all sorts of crazy instruments, and I kind of have been thinking about you along those same lines because you know, you're bringing this instrument that really is a traditional orchestral instrument, sort of, you know, 20th century and you know, Rachmaninoff. There's always a bass clarinet in the score, and yet you're using it as a jazz voice. So tell me how you came to that.
Well, you're absolutely right. I grew up playing the clarinet as a kid,
right?
And as such, you learn the classical repertoire. You know, the clarinet had a role in jazz and early New Orleans music and through the swing era, and then it kind of just disappeared. Right. And a lot of that lined up with the entrance of bebop as the main form of jazz, and clarinet, which is a quieter instrument, doesn't project and it's technically really challenging. It kind of lost its place. You had a couple people doing it. Buddy DeFranco was a great clarinet player that played bebop. But it really wasn't until later in the 60s when a guy named Eric Dolphy, who played with Charles Mingus and John Coltrane and did his own work, he was playing the alto saxophone, the flute, and he introduced the bass clarinet. And that's where it started kind of being reintroduced in. Like you said, it's this orchestral instrument by nature, quieter. And so then you had some other people. Benny Maupin was someone that used it very prominently with Miles Davis. And then a gentleman in the, I'd say the 90s named Don Byron, who really, to my ears as a clarinetist, searching for what was possible with the clarinet in modern jazz. I heard Don Byron, and I thought, this is what can be done. And the beautiful thing about this performance that we're doing is, it's my quintet featuring me on bass clarinet, along with Don Byron, who's going to be our guest on the performance. So, you know, we are two people that have taken this uncommon instrument, given it a modern voice, a place in the music. Don for 30 years, 30 plus years. I'm coming up on, I guess, about 20 years of being on the scene playing and tackling the challenges technically, tackling the challenges sonically to make it work, to be able to hang in there like a saxophone player or a trumpet player, play with intensity, play with the softness, the beauty of the instrument, and just have this whole range and this unique quality. Right.
Well, and I think, you know, it's interesting. I've always, you know, I was, as we were talking earlier, in my former life, I was a trombone player. And one of the things that when you're not playing orchestral repertoire, but when you're playing jazz and you're playing, especially sort of more traditional jazz, you know, there's this idea that the trombone is very close to the human voice. And I've actually, of the woodwind family, I've always sort of thought that the clarinet of those you know, you take the flute, oboe, clarinet, bassoon, the clarinet actually has this very vocal quality to the sound, which doesn't really exist with the bassoon or the oboe or even the English horn. You know, the flute, but the clarinet it's kind of unique. You know, it's got a unique voice. Is that something that maybe factors into this?
It's interesting you say that, because with my ensembles, I do a range of sizes, from as small as 2 with me and a piano player, up to my 10-piece group, where I have 6 horns, piano, bass, and drums, sometimes a vocalist. And what I notice is that the clarinet and the bass clarinet pair well with any other instrument, whether it's a saxophone player or a flute or a guitar, an electric guitar or the piano. And so, yeah, there's a universality. And I have noticed sometimes that there's that vocal quality to it. Also, I feel like it's got a similar quality as cello.
Oh yeah. Oh, absolutely.
Which also has that kind of
same.
that warmth, that richness
Yeah.
that the voice can, like a baritone voice can have. So yeah, and I love it for that.
I remember years ago, I was playing, and one of the guys that was a trumpet player came to rehearsal one day. He picked up and he brought a French horn, and it completely changed. This was sort of, we were playing jazz standards and things, and he thought, hey, I'm going to try it.
Yeah.
And it's that round, warm sound in the middle.
Yeah.
And the bass clarinet, it's not. I mean, it's we call it a bass clarinet, but it's not crazy low. It can be.
It's the same range as a tenor saxophone.
As a tenor, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And so it sits in that middle, that middle zone of the band. I'm fascinated, and I've listened to your recordings online. I've found on YouTube, and I've gone to your website, and it's a great sound. And again, what I love about it is the idea that here you're taking something that is not a traditional, instrument for a jazz ensemble, and you're making it. And actually, it feels like the question I sort of think about when I hear you play is, well, why didn't we do this earlier? So it's
I think largely for those things we were talking about earlier. There's many challenges, but I'm a little bit marching to the beat of my own bass clarinet, I guess, and was really persistent and broke through some of these challenges technically, sonically, to make it work. And to your point, it's a very unique instrument. Like if we hear the sound of it, you were talking about it as a comparable to the tenor saxophone. Like if we go in this range, and if we go down, you can't do that on the tenor saxophone.
No, you can't. No, you can't go
so
down there.
So it really has this beauty that it offers.
Yeah, it's fabulous. I mean, it's really cool that you're able to sort of do this. So I'm looking forward to this concert. This is going to be fun, and it's going to be one of the things about doing a concert like this here is that the audience is actually, well, it's not quite as close as we are now, but it's not much different. So they get to really hear you. They hear you breathe. They watch what you do. It's one of the things we've really discovered about this space is that when the audience is there, it really is such a tight connection to the performer, which you don't really get very often. And a friend of mine was describing this. They said, it's like doing cabaret in Paris when you go to a Parisian cabaret, because the person singing in front of the piano could reach over to your table and pour some more wine in your glass without having to bend too far. And there's that creates a whole vibe.
And that's the kind of setting that with jazz clubs, historically, that's been the kind of setting that we're used to and like, because it works well acoustically, because you've got that connection with the audience. I was, a few weeks ago, I was up in Canada. We had performances in Toronto, Montreal, some other places. And the venue we played in Montreal, intimate little spot, beautiful. And the stage was right up to the tables.
Right.
And at one point I realized we're about to start, and I didn't have a glass of water, and I always need water while we're playing.
Right.
So, the people on that table next to me are 3 feet away. So
Right.
I just said, hey folks, could you, when the waiter comes around, could you get me some water? They did that, and then they passed it to me, like just handed it to me, and I'm right there. So
Oh my God,
I love that intimacy,
Yeah.
that connection, because it really lets us. I mean, look, great grand halls are great, are nice, but acoustically, to be right there, to feel the sonic waves, to see the musicians, to be up close.
Right.
That's what's so special.
Yeah, and I think you talked about grand halls. I mean, there is something, there's always something really exciting when you go do a big room.
Yeah.
Whether you're for me, whether I'm conducting an orchestra or an opera, in a big room. But I agree, you know, that there's something about those smaller houses when you do an opera in a 750 seat hall instead of a 2,000 seat hall, because the audience is practically hanging over the pit.
Yeah.
And you know, the experience is different. And I think that's something, you know, I've noticed that a lot of bands who were playing mega venues 20 years ago, they're going back to play. That's not that the Beacon in New York is a small room, but they're going back to theaters as opposed to playing just arenas. And I think the reason is that the experience is very different, and it's different for the performers.
Yeah.
You know, as you said, you have this person handing you a glass of water. It changes the game. It's a game changer. So, well, Todd, I am so excited you're coming. Welcome to Live Arts.
Thank you.
And I will look forward to seeing you on September 30th at 7:30 p.m. right here at the Live Arts Studio. And you can go to liveartsmaryland.org to get your tickets. And we will look forward to seeing you here at the studio. Welcome.
We're going to have a good time.
It's going to be great. Thank you. See you soon.